Morning, everyone. Welcome back to Forepaugh's Wine Notes. I'm going to focus on one wine today that we have arriving at the end of this week. It'll probably go on the list for service Saturday night because this is, I think, easily the most exciting special wine we've added to the wine list at Forepaugh in my time there. One of the most exciting wines I've ever added to the wine list anywhere. When Lewis and I had this idea a few weeks ago to try to find some wines from the 1976 vintage to celebrate our 50th anniversary as a restaurant at Forepaugh. I reached out to various people around the country that I thought might have something that would be useful, and was able to find the 1976 Chateau Gillette Creme de Tête, the Sauterne that we have on the menu by the glass for $90 for a 3-ounce glass. Uh, it's a lot of money for a glass of wine, but it's also very, very special wine. The wine came, the ullage is, there's almost no ullage, which is the distance between the wine and the cork, which the less ullage, the better condition the wine is in. There's almost no ullage with this wine, and the color is exactly perfect for what you would expect or hope, and not really hope, a 50-year-old Sauterne would be. So this has every chance of being something truly extraordinary. It's actually made by the Chateau Gillette is owned by the winemaker at Chateau d'Yquem. So he knows what he's doing making Sauterne. He makes the greatest Sauterne of all. And he also makes this one, which is about as good, just not as expensive. So we have that. And then I found the DeRose Armagnac at Haskell's, where I used to be a wine manager. And of course, Armagnac is similar to cognac, but it's made in the village of Armagnac as opposed to the village of Cognac. The oak, the cooperage is darker, so it lends a little smoky character to the brandy. Cognac and Armagnac are both uh, grapes, which are pressed, and then the juice that results is distilled like Scotch or bourbon. So it's a distilled product. Uh, this cooperage in Armagnac is also different from the cooperage in Cognac. And so the end results in a slightly different product. They're very similar. The Armagnac is a little kind of woodier and smokier than Cognac, which is kind of cleaner and fresher. Um, uh, and so that was fun. This now, and also with Armagnac, it's legal to vintage date it, which is not in Cognac. But the one caveat is Armagnac and Cognac distilled products don't change once they're bottled because they're distilled; they're the same forever. Um, so they just get more rare. They're more expensive because they're more rare, not because they're better. And one fun fact is that glass that's shaped like this that everybody serves Cognac and Armagnac in. That's actually not the Cognac glass. The Cognac glass is a different glass. This is the Armagnac glass. So what we call a brandy snifter. This is actually the Armagnac, traditional Armagnac glass. So it's fun that for this wonderful, wonderful thing, we have the exact perfect glass. Now, so I was also able to, I also reached out to my friend, Michael Mondavi, who is Robert Mondavi's son in the Napa Valley. I don't want to insult your intelligence, but I just want to be sure you know who Robert Mondavi was. His parents actually moved to Napa from the Iron Range north of here. So we have that local tie-in. And then when he and his brother had a falling out at Charles Krug Winery, which his family owned, and his mother kind of all but disowned him or kicked him out of the family, just, told him to take a hike. Uh, that's another story, but I won't get into the details of it. But he started his own winery, Robert Mondavi Winery. The legend is that he and his son Michael actually set up an office in the vineyards at Charles Krug and actually went to work at a desk in the vineyards at Charles Krug until they could figure out what they were going to do for the rest of their lives, since they were no longer involved in Charles Krug. But Robert started a winery called Robert Mondavi Winery. It's important to remember that at that time, for the next few decades, Robert Mondavi made really, really extraordinary wine. The winery made extraordinary wine, not kind of what they do now, because it's no longer Robert Mondavi Winery is no longer owned by the Mondavi family. It's owned by another conglomerate, like is so much the case these days. Um, And also, something that's not very well known is that Michael was actually the winemaker. Robert was a visionary and a ambassador for California wine. But Michael had already graduated from enology school in 1966 when they started the winery. He's 82 years old now, so he was young, but he was a winemaker. And he made all those legendary wines, the 68, 74 Mondavi Reserve Cabernets, and others. So Robert went around the world saying, "I'm going to make the wines that are equal of any in the world, in the Napa Valley. I'm going to make wines that are equal of any in the world." And he was a great ambassador for Napa Valley wine and a visionary for Napa Valley wine. Because at that time, most California wine was of very low quality. It was mostly jug wine, and even the wines that weren't jug wines were they were more focused on quantity than quality. But Robert said, "I'm going to make great wine." He also created the phrase "Fumé Blanc" for Sauvignon Blanc because he thought it would be easier for Americans to say. Not many wineries still use that phrase. He does. Ferrari Carano does. Dry Creek does. Most people now call their Sauvignon Blanc. But he did also create that phrase, Fumé Blanc, because he thought it'd be easier for Americans to say. He had a couple events at my restaurant in Nashville, which was obviously a huge honor to have him at my little strip mall restaurant. But for whatever reason, he picked us for charity events that we had, and it was an honor, privilege to do those with him. So I have a long history. That's where I met Michael. So Michael responded that due to my prompt about the 1976 vintage, last Friday night he opened a bottle of the 1976 Mondavi Reserve Cabernet Sauvignon, and it was just beautiful with a grilled on the barbecue ribeye, or not ribeye, a strip steak. It was just beautiful. And if we wanted to buy some, he had 6 bottles that we could buy. I asked him what he wanted to charge for it, and he said, "Well, I don't really have any idea of what to charge for it, but uh, the wine searcher says it's $395 a bottle retail, but I would be insulted if you offered me a little bit less or a little bit more than that." Uh, so I but he also said, and this is amazing. When he sold the winery, when he sold Robert Mondavi in 2004, he and his wife Isabel created a foundation called the Isabel and Michael Mondavi Foundation. All proceeds from the sale of any wines from their wine cellars went to this charity, which benefits women, children, and the elderly in need in the Napa Valley. So 100% of so I offered him $375 a bottle, but 100% of the $375 goes to that charity, which effectively makes, after the tax deduction, makes the cost $225 a bottle. So we're going to put this on the list for $675 a bottle instead of, probably more likely would be north of $1,000 a bottle. Um, then and one fun thing is that the reason they still have some is because when they first set it down, they they saved more of it than they would have a different vintage because it's Michael's daughter's birth year, and he wanted to have some to be able to celebrate her birthday over the years that come. So they still have some to offer. We also know that Michael tasted it Friday night, and it was, quote, beautiful. And he's a pretty good source. I tasted the 73, 74, and 75 regular bottlings in his wine cellar last year, and especially the 74 was really a magical wine. The 75 was beautiful. 73 was a little tired, but still very enjoyable. I would expect the 76 to be closer to 76 Reserve. Not the bottles I tasted were the regular bottling, not the reserve bottling. I would expect the 76 reserve bottling to be, well, based on Michael's comment, beautiful. Um, and all these bottles were put in those wine racks probably in 1979 by Robert and never touched since. And with old wine, provenance and storage is everything. And these 6 bottles are from absolutely perfect province. They've been stored perfectly. They were put in the wine racks by Robert Mondavi himself, and they haven't been touched since until they were removed from those wine racks and put in a shipping box and shipped to us today. And we'll get them Friday, so they can be on the wine list Saturday. We hope. Um, we're going to, as I said, we're going to price it at $675, which I think is honestly a steal for this a wine of this kind of legendary status. It almost doesn't matter what it tastes like because it's such an extraordinary find. It's such an extraordinary thing to be able to offer a wine from Robert Mondavi's personal wine collection to our guest at Forepaugh. Also, we only have 6 bottles. So I'm going to want to be a little judicious. I don't want the first guy that comes in Saturday night to buy all 6 bottles. Um, I don't know if somebody does. I might say yes because I like selling nice wine, but we want more than one person to be able to enjoy this. And so anyway, I looked on the Wine Advocate for if there was any press on this wine, and interestingly, I mean, it doesn't really matter because I know Michael thinks it's beautiful wine, so it's a beautiful wine. He wouldn't mislead me. We're too good of friends, but thought it was interesting just to see what the Wine Advocate says. And interestingly, when it was first released, the scores were pretty middling. It was like got like 85, 88 points, which you might be a little concerned about a 50-year-old 85-point wine. Is it still going to be enjoyable? However, this is often the case that ratings change as the wine matures. And in 2009, Neil Martin, who is now the Napa Valley correspondent for the Wine Advocate, posted this tasting note. Tasted at the Robert Mondavi Cabernet Reserve Vertical, this 1976 Cabernet Sauvignon has a subtle nose, very complex, with stewed dates, molasses, cardamom, ginger, and a touch of marmalade, all with wonderful definition and vivacity. The palate is medium-bodied, beautifully balanced, superb acidity and vibrancy. Real sweetness here, very focused, cedar and mint lacing the finish. Awesome length, a beautiful wine, 95 points. So, 95-point Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon, 50 years old, from Robert Mondavi's personal wine collection on our wine list starting Saturday night. I think this is easily the most exciting wine I've purchased for Forepaugh in my time as the sommelier here. I think it's probably one of the handful of most exciting wines I've ever purchased for any restaurant I've been involved with. I mean, there's the 1870 Glamis Castle Lafite Magnum back in 1994. So obviously, that's those are the two I would say. But I've bought so much great wine in my life. I've been really lucky. I've sommelier some amazing restaurants, and I've there's a long history of really, really amazing wines, but this is definitely right up there with anything I've ever added to a restaurant wine list in my time as a professional sommelier. Fun stuff. See you this evening. Let's have another great week.